Hi everyone, welcome back to Lola's Frugal Life podcast. Today we're going to talk about budgeting your time and being frugal with your days, just like you would be with your money. Kind of thinking about how to make sure you're getting the most out of the money, the time you have, just like you would with the money you have. But before we get into the topic, I just wanted to read, I got another rating and review on Apple Podcasts, which I'm always kind of begging for. So I was super excited. I'm always excited when I get another one because it's supposed to really help with, having them put the show out for more people to see. So this review was from Clickerma, and it says, so helpful and inspiring. I look forward to Lola's podcast every week. Her meal plans are simple, full of easy recipes and practical tips for making mealtime a breeze. She's very relatable, responds to her listeners, and makes you feel like she's been your friend for years. So thank you so much for writing that. Like I said, I do check, I constantly check to see if I have another rating or review because they're infrequent just because my audience is still relatively small and, it is difficult to get ratings and reviews. So thank you so much for doing that. And if anyone else has a chance or the time, I'm working really hard to try and grow this show. And those ratings and reviews do really help. So if you have a minute and you haven't already done so, if you wouldn't mind writing a rating and review, but thank you again to Clickerma for putting that really nice review. So anyway, like I said, today I wanted to talk about kind of thinking about your time, budgeting your time like you would with your money. So there are things we can do to increase the amount of money that we bring in so that we can have more to put towards the things that we love. But unfortunately, we cannot make more time, so we need to be even more careful with how we use it. But if we put some effort into making the most of our time, we can often accomplish things that we wouldn't have even thought were possible. And, just like we might find we're wasting money when we really start to track our spending, the same can be said about time we might be wasting. So, there's things we often have to cut out of our financial budget so that we have enough money to spend on the things that we value. Sometimes we might have to do the same exact thing to get rid of excess things in our schedule so that we have the time for what we want to be able to do. So obviously it's not something that can be perfected in an instant, just like your budget, but by starting somewhere and making little changes, you will see that you can probably find some more time in your day to do little things that are important to you. Even if it's only a little bit of extra time, it'll still have a positive impact on your life. So what you want to do is really just kind of start by thinking about what is most important to you. What would you like to be doing more of, but often tell yourself you don't have time for? When you're budgeting your time, it's not about being able to jam in as many tasks as you possibly can. It's about really making sure that you have time to be doing what you want to be doing with your time. You want to feel good about what you did with your day. I'm sure all of you have had some of those days like I have had where, at the end of the day, we're just super happy about the things we did or what we got done, or, we felt like we really made good use of your time. So the thing is when we can be more intentional about what we're doing with our time, we can have more of those days that leave us feeling really great about what we had done. So when you're starting to kind of think about how you're using your time and trying to kind of budget your time and figure out what you want to spend more time on, it's really important to be realistic, or you're definitely going to be let down with the results. Because most of us obviously have a certain amount of time that's going to be taken up by priorities no matter what. So unless your plan is to become completely irresponsible for the things that are required of you, you're going to have a limited amount of time to work with. So of course that doesn't mean you can't take a look at your responsibilities to see what might be able to be eliminated or delegated or cut back on. You definitely can do that. But if you feel like the responsibilities you have are somewhat reasonable, then you really only have that excess time to work with. So it's important to acknowledge the time that your responsibilities take up so that you can set realistic expectations on what you can actually fit in for your goals and other activities that you want to be doing. So as you know, when we budget money, we usually have some things in the budget that we know will have to be cut if something more urgent comes up. Maybe if we find out we're spending more money on groceries, we might have to cut something else to make up the difference. Now, that's actually what I'm trying to figure out for myself right now. But I would guess that many of us have more on our to-do list than we can ever reasonably accomplish in a reasonable amount of time. So we have to really take time to think about what the current priority is, and we might have to cut some of those other things out in order to make room for those priorities. You might want to take a look at your to-do list or your things that you want to do, not just like your regular tasks, like I have to do the dishes or do laundry or things like that, but other things that you want to be working on, and maybe just pick the top 2 or 3 things that you would really like to be making progress on. Maybe you can complete them, maybe you just do a little bit, depending on how involved the task is. And then you really need to let go of the other things. Don't think about them. You have them on your list, so you're not going to forget about them, but there's nothing we could do to create more time. So if you're working on one thing and thinking about all those other things that you have to do also, it's just going to cause stress. And then it also impacts how much you can focus on what you did choose to work on. So once you've chosen your priorities, you really want to try and stick to them and know that you can get to those other things at another time. But if you find that something is still really bothering you and just kind of nagging you that you're not working on it because you're not putting time to it, then maybe you need to reconsider your priorities. Maybe that thing is really your priority and something that you chose can be waited on until later. And when you're budgeting your time, just like we include money in our budget for things that we enjoy, it's not just about paying bills and building up savings. We might include money in the budget for dining out or taking a trip or things like that. When we budget our time, we also need to make sure we include those types of things in our time budget. So including time for resting and having fun. And while I love to be productive and check things off my to-do list, I don't want to spend every minute of every day just being productive. I want to have time to take some time off and just have fun. So by planning how you use your time, you'll feel even better about taking those rest times because you'll know that you got some progress done on important things, and then you could just relax and enjoy your time and not feel like you should be doing something else. One of the things that I think is really important too with budgeting our time is planning what you're going to do if you have some time off. So if you have a long weekend or you have a week off or whatever the case may be, it's good to kind of come up with a general plan on what you're going to do with that time. It doesn't have to be rigid. It doesn't have to be all about working. It could be going to a park, seeing a movie. Maybe it might be reorganizing a closet or sorting through seasonal clothes. It might be making some appointments, or it could just be sitting in a chair and reading for hours. It doesn't matter what you decide to do with your time, but you just kind of want to make sure that you have some type of plan on what you want to do. Because when you decide what you want to do, you'll feel good about what you got from the day, whether that was just having a long, relaxing day or if it was getting some chores done or whatever it was. It's just sometimes when we have time, we feel like we have so much time that we could just kind of wander around, maybe pick up a thing here or there, scroll on our phone, and just kind of not really get into much of anything and just kind of waste the time away. And then you don't really feel like you kind of got out of that time off what you would have liked to get out of it. So really just kind of try and think about what you might want to do with that time. So something else we could do too to help us with budgeting our time a little bit better is to track time, track the time that it takes to do certain things. Sometimes we might think certain tasks take either more or less time than they actually do, just like we might think we're spending more money or less money on certain expenses until we actually start tracking it. So if you kind of track how long it takes to do certain tasks, it'll give you a better understanding of how much time you have to work with for other things you're trying to fit in. It's really difficult to make adjustments to manage your time better if you really don't know where it's going. So of course, you do not have to time everything we do and know exactly how long it takes to do every single thing that we do in our lives, but it can be helpful to know about how long it takes to do certain things, like load and put away the dishes, or clean the bathroom, or put away laundry, or clean a pet's cage, and any other of those recurring tasks that you do on a regular basis, because you know you're going to have to do those there are things that you just always have to do. So if you know how long they take, you'll know that that chunk of your day is already allocated to those, and there's not going to be anything else you can fit in. And by knowing how long something, how much time something's going to take up, you're not going to plan to do 3 hours worth of tasks in a 2-hour time slot. So if it takes you, if you have to be somewhere at a certain time in the morning, say on a weekend you have an appointment, like today I have a car service appointment at 11, I'm not going to get up and plan to do something 2 hours before my appointment that really would take me 3 hours, and then I'll be in the middle and have to stop. So just kind of knowing how long certain things take to complete can really be helpful in kind of budgeting out your time, so that you know how much time you have available to do other things that you want to get done in the day. So another tip for, I don't know if it's really budgeting your time, but kind of making sure you can kind of plan out how you're going to do those things that you planned for, is block scheduling. I've also seen it referred to as time blocking. But basically what you do with block scheduling is you kind of section off your day into time frames, and you schedule what you're going to do in those time slots. So of course you don't want to get over ambitious and schedule out every minute with accomplishing goal related tasks. You still need to shower, cook, eat, and rest. But block scheduling works really well because you can make progress on several things by devoting a period of time in your day to each thing that you want to work on. So of course you do have to have some discipline and stop yourself at the end of the time slot, because the whole idea is to just devote a certain amount of time to one thing and then move on to something else, because you want to make progress on various things throughout the day. So one thing too, though, is you do want to also make sure that when you're kind of setting this type of schedule, that you want to consider like how your body operates too. Like for me, I'm a morning person, so I don't want to do anything that requires more than like the smallest amount of energy after dinner. So for me, I wouldn't have any time frames blocked out in the evening because I know I won't do it. I really love block scheduling because I know that I can focus on like what I've planned for the time block, and I don't have to worry about other things that I want to get done that day because I know I already put them in a future time slot later in the day. So it's like you kind of pick your priorities, like what do you want to get done today, and then you plot them out when you're going to work on them. That way, when you're working on one thing, you're not thinking about the other things in your back of your mind, like when am I going to get to those, because you already know when you're going to get to them because you already have them slotted in a certain time frame for that day or for later in the week. And then the last tip I have for budgeting your time and kind of using your time wisely is don't be a perfectionist. This applies to so many things, but it definitely does apply to with time management, because you can waste a lot of time trying to get things just right without a whole lot of extra benefit. When you kind of exhibit perfectionism tendencies, you wind up, I'm not saying this right, but when you kind of are, sorry, I got to start that over. I just can't think how I'm trying to say what it is. But basically, when you try and be a perfectionist and you want to make sure that everything is done exactly the right way, and you don't start until you know exactly the right way to do it, it makes you procrastinate, because you want to get something done perfectly. And if you don't know the way to get it done perfectly, then you'll just not do it at all. So this can waste a lot of our time, because if we sit around thinking about how to get something done the right way, we're just sitting thinking, we're not doing. So it's better to have something done not perfectly than to not have it done at all. So just moving on and getting something done rather than wasting time trying to figure it out the best way is so much better, because you can always figure it out as you go along and make it better as you go along. But don't just stop and wait until you have the best way to do something. So that's it for today. I hope that this maybe gave you some inspiration to find some time in your day to do more of the things that you'd really like to be working on. And just one last thing, of course, it doesn't have to be tons of time. I didn't really mention this in the episode, but even if you just squeeze in like 15 minutes to work on something, you're still making progress on something that you might not have otherwise done. So just try and see how you could use your time a little bit better and where you might have some of those time wasters that you can use for something that would be more working towards the things that you really enjoy in your life. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you here next week. So thank you for checking in for this podcast episode. And don't forget, you can always email me with any questions or suggestions at lolasfrugallife@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Lola's Frugal Life. And you can find a blog post for most of my episodes and definitely all of my meal plan episodes at lolasfrugallife.com. You can also join our private listeners group at facebook.com/groups/lolasfrugallife. And if you enjoy the show, please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen from. And I would love it if you would screenshot the show and tag me on Instagram so I could see you're listening. Also, if you can please take a couple of seconds to rate and review the podcast. Those ratings and reviews are what help the show come up better in search results so that other people can find this podcast. So that will really help me in growing my audience. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have an awesome day.